So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us for this APIX event. So, before I get started, just a heads up, the usual housekeeping. So, please note this meeting is being recorded. And what we'll do is, for those that weren't able to attend today, we'll post the recording of this meeting on the HL7 Vulcan YouTube page. So, for anyone who's unable to join, they'll be able to watch the video there. Also, usual rules if you don't want to be on camera, if you don't want to have your voice recorded, then feel free to stay on mute. You can put questions or comments in chat, or if you don't want to be recorded at all, then of course you can jump out of the meeting and the recording will be there for you. Okay, so to carry on now, let's get into our event. Can everyone see the screen okay? I know Zoom is a little bit... can everyone see my screen now that I'm sharing full screen? I know sometimes Zoom is a little bit weird. Okay, perfect. Excellent. Thank you very much. Colleagues, just stop me. So Filippo, Rita, if I can't see the chat right now, so if anything happens, just give me a shout out. So again, thank you everyone. So we've been working on this APIX project since about, I think it was about August of last year when we started, and the activity has really picked up at the beginning of this year. So we're really excited to present what we have developed so far to this forum and to everyone. This is one of the objectives of this meeting, is to raise awareness of what we have done, demonstrate that real-time exchange is actually possible in this regulated product space, and to showcase the benefits of this new approach. So we're going to give you an introduction. So Rita and I will give you an overview of what APIX is and what this is all about. Then we'll go into some technical demos. So Rita will demo, Core will demo, and then Omar will do a demo. And then hopefully we'll have some time at the end for some questions as well. And this won't be the only event. We'll actually have a series of these that will provide more and more information about this project. So so really excited. We've kind of gotten things to a maturity point where we think it's ready to share, and pretty excited about what we've been able to achieve so far. So let's start. So let's get into what is this and what is this all about and why are we all here? So the reference to Netflix in that title is one, it's a bit of a kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference, but it's also a direct metaphor for what we think this represents and what is the benefits that this could provide to this whole space, this whole life sciences space. So you look at it in three areas. Like, what does that moment in history, in business history, that Blockbuster versus Netflix situation, what does it represent? It represents a clean break from the status quo. It was the advent of streaming at scale for video content at that time, and it was an example of disruptive innovation. And we think actually APIX is that's a good metaphor for what APIX is going to bring to this whole space. So in this example, APIX is Netflix, and the PDF world, the ECTD, the kind of current iteration of how gateways work, is the Blockbuster in this situation. And hopefully, as you start to learn more about this project, you'll start to see why we're making that comparison, why we're making that reference. And as you see in that right-hand side, you kind of see a lot of books and papers have written about how technology tends to develop on S-curves. And one S-curve hits a plateau and starts to drop off, and another curve starts to shoot up. And we think this is that green line. This is where APIX is going to live, is that new thing that's starting to replace the old thing. So let's get into what this is and what it's all about. So when you look at the current landscape, we have this fragmented world. And if you take a step back and you look at all the different product lines, like human drugs, devices, vet drugs, OTC, natural health products, food, you have this fragmented world where different regulators have different approaches. So sometimes it's FTP, email, gateway, you use ECTD for this, but you can't use ECTD for that. sometimes you send something through a secure portal, but it comes back through email. Questions come back through email. So we have this really fragmented approach
Hey, Craig, I'm
to
sorry to
yeah.
interrupt. Something's screwy on the slide. It's sort of stuck between slides for all of us. There we go. Thank you.
Oh, okay, so okay, there it looks like there might be a bit of a delay, so I'll try to pause when I switch.
No, it was kind of just between, but it's good now. Yeah.
Okay, okay, perfect. So yeah, so we have this fragmented world, and when we're taking lessons learned from the finance industry. So when you look at the finance industry, there's something called Swift, and there's also something called ISO 20022. Long story short, without getting into all the gory details, the finance industry has a set of technical standards that allow the banks to communicate with each other interoperably. So meaning they have a common technical language that allows any banks, on a national scale or on an international scale, to exchange information with each other. And they do it seamlessly because they have one common way of doing everything. And each bank can have their own systems, their own infrastructure, but in between, when they're talking to each other, they have these common technical standards. So we looked at that and we said, well, why can't we have that for this whole life sciences sector as well? And this is how where APIX comes in. Is APIX is designed to be like the Swift, like the ISO 20022, but for the life sciences sector. So what this is a common way for all regulators, companies to exchange information with each other. So regulator to regulator, company to regulator, company to company. Now, it's important to note this is a technical standard for exchanging information and tracking information. This is not a system. This is not one, for example, it's not a cloud system. Nothing against cloud systems. It's fantastic. It's great. But the emphasis on that banking approach where, yes, you can have each, point to point communications where each system is separate, but you also have like a central bank concept where everyone talks to a central body. And so it's important to note that this supports all of that. So whichever model is being approached, so whether it's Access or Orbis or Prism, whatever the case may be, this supports that because it's all about the exchange of the information. It's not the infrastructure, which is a separate aspect of this. So how does this work in practice? So get into a little bit of the detail. So very high level, and of course, over time we'll get into detail, but very high level, the idea is you have an API or application programming interface. Again, long story short, that is an international standard and it's how apps talk to each other. So think of it like a phone call, like one software application can call another, they can talk to each other. And it's a standard way for having systems talk to each other. It's very secure, very standard, it's been around for ages. It's part of the fabric of the internet. So you register your company with the regulator, for example, and say, okay, now I'm registered because they're not going to just open these APIs to just general public. I have to register. I'm certified. I have certificates that prove who I am, and I can log in and out securely, or I can connect securely. Then what happens is you have what's called a binary resource and fire, where I can encode documents and I can stream them to the regulator's fire server. Once the documents land on the regulator's fire server, I have what's called a document reference. And the binary is just very basic information. It's like the name of the document, not like the type. It's a PDF, it's a docx, whatever it is. The document reference is then created, and that applies metadata to the document, to the binary. So this is like your CTD section. This is the version. This is other categories. This is status of the document. And then next, what you have is a task. And the task is like a submission. And if you think of an Amazon shipment, you know how you can track your shipment and you see, the timeline, you see where your shipment is. That is akin to what a task does. It's the coordinator for the submission, and it tracks every single step in your submission to great detail. And then lastly, you have what's called a subscription. And this is part of, this is all out of the box fire services. So anytime something changes with a task, so let's say the regulator changes the status of the task, I have subscribed to that submission and I would get notifications. And I would say, okay, something that the regulator has changed the status. Therefore, I can connect and say, hey, what did they do? What did they change in the status? And to give you an example, and by the way, I'm skipping over some slides just in interest of time, but we'll post these slides online as well, so you'll have access to them. So just to give you an example of how this works as the task progresses through a submission. So this is like a shelf life submission scenario. So you start with your initial submission. This is your initial task. And, and this is initial task. And then you have what's called input and output. So a task has an input and an output. It's almost like a folder in a sense, or a virtual folder. And here are my documents that I'm submitting to the regulator for review. Then the task gets updated. The regulator validates what I sent and everything was successful, so they updated the status. Then the regulator sends me an invoice. I respond to the invoice. So we're going back and forth with these tasks. So I get sent an invoice, I send back proof of payment. Then the regulator asks me questions. They send me questions, I send responses, and this is all tracked in the back and forth. Then eventually, of course, the regulator makes a decision, and then they post that decision with a task. And in the output, in this example, you'd see a copy of the approval letter, the decision letter, the final assessment report, whatever the case may be is related to that decision, that would get posted. And then all of this metadata, so the status, there's multiple statuses, there's relationships, so you can have a parent, child, grandchild relationship between tasks. The tasks can be version controlled. There's date and timestamps on the tasks. So what you can do is use that metadata to recreate a visual view of your regulatory lifecycle. And you can do all kinds of analytics with this information. So for the regulators on the call or the regulators who watch this, I remember from my Health Canada days how painful it could be to create the annual performance report. And you have to gather up all these metrics and you have to put together the graphs and everything for that report. It can be kind of a painful process if you're doing it manually. Whereas this could prepare those graphs and those reports saying, here's our cycle time, here's how many submissions we received of any given type. And you can use that to build those reports or the data that is used in those reports. Similar thing on the industry side is you can say, okay, well, how am I doing in terms of cycle time? How many questions did I receive last year? Where am I? What's my performance looking like? So all kinds of analytics can be pulled out of the task. And then if each of these changes triggers the subscription workflow. So let me pause there. And Rita, do you want me to advance
Yeah.
the slides? Okay.
So Craig, we have a hand up. Jose's hand is up. If you have a question, Jose.
Yeah, thanks, Rita. Craig, this is fantastic, and the amount of work that you guys have been able to do on this is just mind blowing. I have a quick question though, with respect to the tasks. So, is there a concept of setting up what should be the set of tasks and the SLAs surrounding those tasks for a given process? Or is that tracked in this, or where would it be tracked? Because I'm just thinking, for example, with the FDA, they've got PDUFA, which set up certain requirements that things need to happen within a particular time frame. And this obviously can help you track that. You illustrate that really well. But the part I don't see is, what are we tracking to? Are things happening in a time frame which is expected? And I know that's going to vary depending on the content of what it is that you're transmitting here, what it is that you're trying to interact with.
Exactly. I think yes, you're right on with that. And I think yes, we can. I think it would be a layered solution. So
Hmm.
at the foundational level, the task has a core structure. That's the FHIR kind of template. And we have the task, we have the statuses, we have the relationships, we have the identifiers. So that is the core structure. But then
Hmm.
to your point, I think each regulator would have their own statuses. And you see there's task status and there's business status. I think each
Right.
regulator will have their own business status, and that business status would be aligned to that regulator's business process. So, for example, EMA would have clock stop, clock start.
Hmm.
And then you would have, on top of that, you would have an application layer that could say, oh, show me, where the clock stops and starts are. Similar with the FDA and the PDUFA, you could have an application layer that is tracking the times and saying, hey, this application started review at this point, the clock started, and you know what, it is due by this time, and you know what, we're heading, into the red zone where, we could be late if we don't speed things up. So I think will be an application layer that would facilitate that kind of business process coordination and management. And this is why we're having this event now, is we need to start getting that feedback,
Hmm.
particularly from the regulators, to say, okay, here is my process, or here is a scenario. Like EMA might say, I have these clock stops, or I sent the company a set of questions and I want a response back in 5 calendar days. How do you incorporate that into the standard so it can facilitate the implementation in that application layer? So yeah, absolutely. I think it'll head in that direction.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, Rita.
Thanks, Craig. So just to introduce myself, I have a couple slides here, but I'm Rita Algori. I'm an Associate Director, Global Regulatory Affairs at Amgen, and I am one of the co-founders of the PQI standard. So Craig just gave us a great overview of APIX, which is helping to exchange structured data and de-silo our information. And that can work alongside other FHIR standards very effectively. So I have a few slides here on data standardization and the PQI standard, which I think will give some context to the demo that I'll give in just a few minutes here. So I think I'm amongst a lot of like-minded people here, but just wanted to take a quick moment to sort of talk about the value of content and data standardization, and how we're continuing to build momentum in this space with the development of different standards. So there are a number of different projects within the regulatory remit that are in varying stages of development these days, including IDMP, which has a FHIR implementation, ICH M11 for the clinical protocol, API for labeling, and then PQI for CMC. And each of these standard sets does a fair bit of world building and expansion into their own unique areas, but they also leverage overlapping concepts and coverage areas. So if you implement one of these, you've made some strides towards implementing pieces of the others. So this is a good showcase of interoperability, content reusability, sort of across an entire filing, extending even virtually into the greater healthcare ecosystem in the future, where we're all using the same language and interoperable exchange mechanisms. So, Craig, if you could go to the next slide, I'm just going to kind of go a little bit deeper into the PQI standard. PQI stands for Pharmaceutical Quality Industry. We created this back in 2023 and published our first version in 2024 in collaboration with industry stakeholders. So our initial goal here was to have a broad CMC standard with a wide scope that we could use to facilitate some internal exchange operations, such as system to system exchange, as well as exchange across some third parties within our network, such as external suppliers, contract manufacturers. But the standard isn't necessarily bound to a specific use case. Those are just some examples. So this is an overview, this spiderweb diagram of the coverage areas of the PQI standard. So it's built to be a modular data model that spans 14 different domains, including identification, composition, organization, stability, manufacturing process, I won't list them all because they're here on the slide, but essentially it helps us get sort of our core CMC information, which is typically stuck in a narrative format, in a technical report, a batch record, a legacy regulatory filing, helps us take that information and get it into a structured, reusable format. And we've mapped these domains to the CTD as well as part of this effort to see what that would potentially look like. Next slide, please. So this is a little dissection here on how you would use the PQI standard to build a stability data package from end to end. So we start from different source systems, which are typically siloed, minimal interaction, if any, between them. And then we can sort of take data from those systems, package it up into the FHIR resources like observation, diagnostic report, plan definition, etc. And then those FHIR resources are helping us make those connections across systems and unite this information into a bundle that's ready for exchange. Essentially, kind of bringing that interoperability and making those connections across those different data sets and attributes and setting up those relationships between them. And then we can dispatch that bundle for delivery via FHIR APIs. It's exchanged as a JSON message, but we have a lot of different options for rendering that message, really making it, human readable and interacting with it. And there's an example of this both in the demo I'm about to give as well as on the next slide. And there's a couple animations here, but this is part of our implementation guide. This is an example of how we can take that JSON message and, really make it more interactive. So here's a stability study viewer. So we can see here in the first image, we have sort of that bottom line on top summary. What are my stability conditions? What tests am I running? What's the conclusion? What's my shelf life? So this combines some very structured data attributes like the stability times and temperatures with a semi-structured narrative conclusion statement. And we have a table here also that's generated by the code on the testing schedule. And we also have, yeah, thanks, Craig. This is not an image that we provided, but the interface is able to generate this graph based on the JSON message of our long-term degradation trends at 25 degrees, as well as this accompanying stability result table. And in the interactive view, you can tab between the study conditions as well. You can look at the 25 degree or the 40 degree. This is just a flat picture on the slide, but it's part of the PQIG and it's live on our website if you want to check it out and kind of get a feel for it. And so that's kind of a snapshot of the human regulatory reviewer-friendly version. But if you go to that last image, sorry, there's a lot of animations here. This is also showing us sort of the breakdown of FHIR resources that are used, and we can navigate the information that way if we want to as well. So there's a lot of flexibility in how we can render this. And again, very excited for the demo to show even more of that sort of live and in action. So next slide, please. So PQI and the other FHIR data standards give us a structured data foundation that we can build upon, which lends us significant capability and opportunity to bring in other efficiency tools. So in the demo, I'm going to show it's based partially on this reference architecture that's shown here, which includes a connected data sourcing layer at the top. So those are all of our structured sources, which feed into a regulatory assembly layer, which includes our data standards. There's an interoperability and exchange layer where we're using that API to API communication that's facilitated based on the APIX standard. And then finally, we can expose those different layers of structured data on both sides. So the sender, which is the sponsor, as well as the recipient, which is the regulator, to AI tools that can enable different levels of automation. So, we can set up event-based deterministic workflows, and we can also use sort of a more agentic generative approach to generate new content. So I'll show, for example, information requests and responses to information requests. So we're going to be looking at kind of this reference architecture and what this can look like based on a custom app that we developed. So I think with no further ado, Craig, if you just go to I've got a sort of filler slide there. We're going to move into the technical demo portion. So I'm going to present first on what we've been doing at Amgen, then I'll pass it over to Core Heitel from NNIT, and then Omar Sarang from DNA Nexus, and then we have some time for questions at the end. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully this will work. Okay, so let me know if you can see it. You should see a screen that says sign in to sponsor CMC.
Yes, we can
All
see.
good? Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to be showing this demo of a custom solution that we developed in-house at Amgen to bring together PQI, APIX, and we also have EPI in there as well, along with an analytics layer that facilitates communication and exchange. So there's a sponsor view here as well as a regulator view. The regulator view is really for illustrative purposes, just to kind of show workflows and the flow of information back and forth. Just a disclaimer, we're not a vendor, and we aren't deploying software to any regulator. It's really just for illustrative demo purposes. So with that, I'm going to start the demo, which is a video that I'm going to provide some voiceover to. We do have working software, but just to kind of make everything fit very seamlessly in the 20-minute window without loading times, we have prepared this video. So we start out with the sponsor view here. We're going to log in via our SSO, which brings us to this dashboard. And we can see sort of at the top here, we have a variety of different environments that we can navigate to. So we have an external data warehouse, we have a regulatory workspace, and we have a Fire Studio. So this connects to basically an enterprise data lake in theory. The actual demo space does not connect to anything because it's just a demo, but effectively, it connects to your system. It can house structured data, and we're tabbing through some of those structured data assets that we can bring into the system. In addition, ideally all of this comes in automatically through that enterprise system, but we can also manually add information if needed. We're going to go next to the Fire Studio. So this is where, our IGs that we've imported are housed. So we can see, what we've imported, and we see a status associated with that. We can see the history. We can see all of the value sets that are associated with those implementation guides. This takes a second to load here, but again, you can see these are all of the value sets and controlled lists. It also gives us some status indicators if, there are any warnings. So again, we're uploading things, but there's always a human in the loop. It always tells us, if there's a problem. Again, we're scrolling through some of the concepts. You can see some of the lists, and they are editable should you need to edit them. We can also filter down. These are just the PQI specific lists that we're showing. So this is a CMC specific list for manufacturing step. We can also, the video moves fast, but we can also show internal mappings. So we don't expect sort of the internal enterprise systems to be using Fire terminology. So it does give us this opportunity to map to Fire within this system. You can also see the bundle profiles. Again, there is a filtering system here, so we can see only the PQI specific bundles. So all of these were imported from the IG. And again, it tells you which components you need for the profile, as well as some business rules associated with that and some descriptions. So we're going to go into our regulatory workspace now, and we're going to start a process of setting up a new submission. So this is all dummy data that you'll see. And so this is for demonstration purposes. We can fill out a few structured fields here, and then I'm just going to pause. So you can see, we fill out a title, we give an application type, we select which regulator, and then we select the product presentation. And this product presentation filter ensures that, we're creating a Fire message for only data that meets these this scope and these attributes. So it's not our entire system that's mapping at this time, but it's really scoped per the product presentation. So in doing this, this is going to create our submission. And the first thing we're going to do, so you can see some flags here. So the first thing we're going to do is, I believe we're going to request an application number. So this is kind of like a sequence number to sort of set up our submission. And this requires some back and forth between the sponsor and the regulator. So what we did is we submitted a request to the regulator for a sequence number. And so what we're going to do now is we're signing in on the regulator side. So this is the regulator's dashboard. And we can see that they received that request from us and they automatically assigned a sequence number to us. So that's an automatic system action. So essentially our system is pinging the regulator system and then it pings us back with the sequence number. So that's not something a human is doing. That's an automated action. We refresh on our side and then we can see, we have an application number now. So that's kind of our first step. So we refresh, we can see it was granted. And now just going to show some of the agents that are associated with sort of our submission environment here. So we've got two of them. So we've got an IR tool and we've also got a value set mapper. And the demo will showcase both of those tools. And they're event-based. So the value set mapper will show first. That's something that triggers if you are trying to prep a Fire package and it fails. So this helps you do that value set mapping and kind of clean up your data. So what we're going to do here, so we have our application number. We're going to start setting up a submission and adding content to that submission. So first we add our stability data. So we have some structured stability data we can pull in here. In addition, if we want to, we can also upload a document. So again, this is giving us flexibility. Of course, the ideal is we are exchanging purely structured content, but if we have a document we want to include as well, we have the capability to do that. So we have in the submission, the structured stability profile, and then we also have some batch data that we're providing. We're trying now to generate a Fire bundle, but it fails. So this is going to, we have some issues with the data. So we need to go to our value set mapper. So this error is going to trigger that automation to run, which we're going to show. So we just went into our automation tab. We're seeing the value set mapper is queued. We're going to click on the run. So I think, it's pointing out here this value set mapper, all of these AI tools that we'll show are based on sort of this structured data backbone and foundation. So this is showing, the PQI standard is defining these value sets, and then the mapper is just assisting with, you're providing a data set, the mapper is helping you fix any errors in your data set to make sure that you're compliant with the Fire standard. Takes a couple seconds here for the agent to work, but we'll see a status update. We can see it's running. And now our run is complete. So we're going to click on that, and we can see that the activity page is just showing effectively, the process that it went through. So you can kind of view the agent's thought process to really sort of see the sequential process that it went through to do the mapping. So we just scroll through here pretty quickly. So you can see the logic that the model used to come up with the proposals. And then if we go to the output tab and open the review table, we can see these are the proposals that it made. So, if we have sort of fragments in our data that aren't mapping to the Fire standard, it's coming up with these proposals. Again, there's some filtering here based on, kind of what's an exact match, Where is there, similar spelling, but maybe some issues? Where are there some semantic matches? Effectively, this requires human review to confirm, the agent comes up with the proposal. We have to kind of review these and confirm that it came up with the right thing before it maps to our data. So here, we're going to apply all. So all of those proposals, that mapping was done. And we're going to go back now to our submission. So we're in the middle of drafting here, and we're going to try to generate our bundle again, now that we've run the value set mapper. Takes a couple seconds. So we're trying again. It's working on it. It'll populate in a second. Okay, there we go. So we have our Fire bundle was generated. We can see a preview of the JSON code there. We're going to scroll through that. So we were able to build our bundle thanks to the agent. We can see we have some warnings here. So there's a validator tool that's built in. For the purpose of the demo, we're not really going to focus on that, but there's a validator that's built in. So that kind of flags to you as the human, there are some problems with this data set. It also shows you, some issues with the data if there are discrepancies. And right now what we're doing is we're getting ready to route this to an internal sponsor reviewer before we send it out to a regulator. So all kinds of issues. Again, it's showing sort of the value of having the human in the loop. It's telling you there's lots of problems with this data. Are you sure you want to move forward? Again, this is a demo, so we're going to move forward with it. We're signing in now with a different sponsor account for the reviewer. So similar dashboard here. Again, we're still in the sponsor environment. This is sort of the reviewer persona that's going to get to see the submission that was built. And you can see there, they have a review task associated with this. It's going to take a second to load. And yeah, so it's awaiting your review. Again, you can see all of those validation errors. You can acknowledge that. You have to kind of click a box saying, I see the error. I want to move forward anyway. So there are a few check boxes that you have to acknowledge. And then, you can either request changes or you can approve it. And upon approving it, you can either as the reviewer or the author, you can send it to the agency. So we just approved it. And now the reviewer is going to send it to the agency. So we can see we're ready to send. So we're going to send this data package off to the regulator. And it takes a couple seconds, but we will get sort of confirmation of that in just a second. So our task was sent. We got that confirmation, and now we're going to switch over to the regulator persona in just a second. I think we're going to view another confirmation. So again, yeah, we can see our task was completed. We see the status. It's sent. It's awaiting acknowledgement. Again, more confirmation steps here. So we're going to switch to the regulator. So we'll be able to see it from the regulator's perspective, what that data package looks like. And use some regulator tools to parse that message. So we can see we received something new. There's 441 fire resources exchanged in one document. So we can start tabbing through this based on the fire resource. There's some composition. You can see, we're not navigating a JSON message. We can see this in sort of a tabular format. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there are lots of opportunities for rendering this information. This is one way to do that. But effectively, you can sort of tab through all of these results in a tabular format. You can also preview the document that got sent over alongside the structured data. And then we have an IR drafting agent. So let's say, you're the regulator, you received this data package and you want some assistance kind of using that structured data with the AI analytics, AI agent on top of it. You want some assistance with drafting an IR and assessing the data package, kind of looking for potential gaps or discrepancies in the data. So our agent just ran. So that's an automated action that happens after we receive a data package. Again, we're kind of scrolling through the agent's thought process here. Sequentially, how did it do the assessment? And we can see the queries here. So we didn't submit a great data package, which we'll see kind of a very scary stability package where our conclusions are not supported by the data, which makes for a good example, but a terrible stability package. So it gives us some reviewer notes, and it gives us, it shows us the fire evidence. So if we wanted to go back to the JSON code, we could. It tells us exactly where it's pulling things from, and then it gives us a draft list of questions. And it came up with 5 questions. These are editable. We're not going to edit them in this demo, but just shows sort of an example of, kind of what the output could be. So we're going to take these and we're going to send an IR. So we just started a workflow to send an IR back to the sponsor. So scrolling through here, there's 5 of them. And we're going to send that back to the sponsor. Takes a couple of seconds, but we'll get a confirmation. So that was sent. And now we're going to go back to our sponsor view. So we're kind of going back and forth a little bit. But we can see now we got a notification we received an information request.
And Rita, sorry, just a time check.
Yep. I've got a couple minutes left, but I can speed it up. Okay, so this is our IR response drafter. Effectively, what this is going to do is it's going to give us some suggestions for how we can respond to the health authorities' questions. So I'm going to skip forward a little bit. This is just kind of showcasing, again, like how this tool works. You can see some of the output. I'm going to just skip forward into kind of integrating that into a filing. So an agent gave us a draft of, proposed actions for us. And then what we need to do is integrate that into a filing. So it doesn't give us the answer necessarily, but it's telling us, this is what the regulator is asking for. This is what you submitted. And then here's the data gap, what you need to submit to kind of answer the question. So it gives us sort of that scaffold that we can build upon and tells us, these are the outstanding pieces of data that you need to submit. So it's kind of serving as a guide for us in completing that IR. So there's what we're going to do here, in the video, it just kind of goes through all of the responses, provides a sample answer. And then just want to show, again, we're generating a fire bundle here. So there is an RTQ implementation guide that we're using. So again, in responding to the information request, that's also going to generate, we're also sending that via fire. So we're generating a bundle. So just wanted to point that out. We're using the questionnaire response resource type. And then ultimately that's going to get sent to our health authority. And in this demo, we're bypassing the review step, the internal review step. The program does let you do that. And I'm just going to show, we sent that IR over to the regulator, and I'm just going to spend another minute or so just showing sort of what that looks like from the regulator side and some of the flexibility that we have. So previously, we showed how we could use the agent that is internal to this system and automatically runs as soon as you receive an IR. But we have other options as well. So we can connect this to an external model. So in this example, so again, we're showing we received that IR. Now we're going outside of that app, and this is OpenAI's Codex tool. So we're showing that we can connect to Codex using the regulator MCP. And this gives us a little bit more control over the assessment that we're running using AI. So again, we can see how Codex is doing its analysis. And then sort of at the end here, rolling through this. Again, it's showing us exactly how it's thinking about it, the sequential process. And then it's going to give us, some key takeaways. We can see the fire paths directly if we want to. But effectively, it gives us some key takeaways about the application that we submitted. So it shows, we didn't support our conclusions, and there are a variety of different problems with the data. But effectively, this is just showing, you can use the agents that are embedded within the application, or you can connect it to an external model as well for a little bit more control and more of that sort of back and forth dialogue. So with that, I will wrap things up. I wanted to give a lot of thanks to Mohit Juneja, who actually developed this application. Also wanted to say thank you to Mike Abernathy for his support of this work, to Sheetal Gaiki and Craig for your feedback on this. This is definitely a group effort, and I appreciate the opportunity to show this today. And with that, I will stop sharing and I will hand over to Core.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Kåre Hyrdel, Danish guy currently living in the US, but today I'm actually live from the NNIT headquarters in Denmark because I am visiting some family. So pleasure to be here. And I would also like by starting with setting the strategic scene, if you will. Actually, I also have prepared a little bit about PQI because I see tons of beautiful synergies with the APIX standard as well. So let me share my screen and get started. All right, can you guys see?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
All righty. So the evolutions of regulatory submissions and workflows. I mean, most of us we know this by now, but we're hearing all this talk about a paradigm shift taking place, and it's actually true. We are moving away from a paper-based paradigm to an ECTD or PDF-based paradigm, and now we are seeing especially EMA is starting to move very fast towards a FHIR-based data exchange paradigm mechanism. And on a broader scale, this replacement of static PDFs into more structured data is, of course, a great stepping stone for AI-guided regulatory workflows, which we just saw in Rita's great demo. And once we get to there, the autonomous workflows will increasingly take over. So again, you can see here, it is essentially a new operating model that the FHIR standard is promising us. To your left, you are looking at how it's typically done today. Not always, but it's very often done like this. You have humans between the systems facilitating the exchange of information, if you will, sometimes in PDFs, sometimes in emails, sometimes via SharePoints, etc., etc. If instead we utilize a Fire-based operating model, the data can actually propagate automatically. And the PQI standard does exactly that for CMC and IDMP concepts, because it allows us to create a semantic contract sitting between the systems and allowing the data to flow freely. And as you can see down here, the PQI standard, its coverage, if you will, it ends here. It's very good at exchanging information internally and with the partner ecosystems for a sponsor, but it does not have coverage for the interactions with the regulators. But that is exactly where the APIX standard comes in. So for the purpose of today, I have prepared two things because I wanted to show this end-to-end flow I was just talking about. First, I will show an internal demo, if you will, that we built for an actual client, but obviously I cannot show that one, so we just reverse engineered it so you guys can see how it works. And then and that one is showing how a specification document can be created in 4.5 seconds using the Fire PQI standard as the semantic bridge to unify data from 3 different systems. After that, I will show how you can take that document or that data and submit it to the regulator via APIX, and how they can have this back and forth with a cycle time that is, at least in principle, much, much faster than how it works today. All right. So first, I will show now how we can create the specification document very, very quickly. So the idea here is, of course, that you need to do some legwork up front, because we need to know where the data that makes up the specification document in scope, where that data should be pulled from. So here we are pulling some of the data from the QMS, another data from LIMS, and some from RIMS. We are then joining the data together. We are applying concept maps, that is what's also called semantic normalization, where we can essentially translate the local terms in those systems to this PQI semantic model. Extremely powerful stuff. Once we do that, we can generate the PQI compliant Fire bundle. And as Rita said, each PQI domain covers a corresponding CTD domain, meaning that if you have the domain covered, you can generate the document. So that's what we are doing here. We are then generating the document, and we are sending that document directly into the RIM system as a version 0.1. So let's have a look at it. So the trigger here is that we imagine we are in our QMS system, and we are now changing the impurity 1 release criteria. So it was 0.20, and we are tightening that to 0.15. Then the system, it detects that change because, as I said, we mapped out where the data lives. So it now understands something changed. I better update the regulatory truth about that specific context. So now it will run, and it will generate that document that I was showing before. 4.5 seconds it took. And we can see here it ran and it passed validation. And now we update the RIM system. And we now have this new document that is ready for review. And this is what it looks like. So it's aggregating that data that came from 3 systems into this specification with the new updated value. So that was impurity 1 that got tightened to a 0.15, as you see here. So that was the first part. Now I would like to show how we can interact with a regulator to inform them about this change that we did. So let's go over to this one here, and I'll click here. So this is just in case you didn't fully get what I'm trying to show here. This is exactly what happened, right? We have a pipeline that is using the PQI translation to generate the document that you just saw, and a fire bundle. Those two can actually coexist, and APIX fully supports it. Okay, so here I have tried to build a demonstrator for how APIX works. On your left-hand side, we see the sponsor view with the work list, and over here we see the health authority. So it is one view here showing a back and forth. It will make sense in a second, I hope, at least. And up here you can see the workflow that we are about to embark on. You can also follow down here if you want to see the APIX functions and fire functions that are in scope for each step. And we also have a audit and provenance train. Okay, so we now have this one here. Let's inform the health authority about that change. Oh. Actually, let me just do this. There we go. Okay, so now the Zen Pharma, they prepared this supplement that I was talking about. They saved that, and I actually forgot to show that. We have this as a PDF rendering, but we also have the underlying fire bundle here, and this is the thing that we are changing. Okay, and we are now connecting to the regulator's API endpoint. And here I am reminded about some work I did recently for a client where we helped them meet the June deadline that EMA put out for SPORE or PMS enrichment. This is actually quite similar. The regulator exposes an endpoint, and then we can connect as a sponsor and subscribe to that endpoint to enable this real-time data exchange. So this is the business view that I have created, but underneath all of this, a bunch of API operations are taking place to ensure that this happens in a good and secure manner. Okay. Then the sponsor, they submit this supplement, and they send it both as a PDF, because I think we are all aware that change is something that happens slowly, right? So let's just submit both of them, because maybe some of the regulators, they still want to review documents. That's okay. And for those that have more mature infrastructure, they can review the fire data. And obviously, if it's the fire data method they are choosing, I think Rita just showed that that's where the agents or AI can really shine, because they have a much easier time reviewing structured data than PDFs, where the risks of hallucinations are pretty severe. So you can see over here that the health authority received this package, if you will. And now we are using the receipt functionality that is built into APIX. So the health authority sends this back to the sponsor, letting them know that we have actually received what you sent to us. And as you can see, this happens very, very fast. Then the health authority, they do a quick conformance check. They check if the submission is well formed and complete, both in terms of the PQI standard, but also in terms of the APIX specification. And again, all of this happens here in the background. And for each of these API operations that are happening back and forth here, we will capture provenance about it, because the fire standard comes with something called a provenance resource which, in my opinion, provides best-in-class provenance for this. Right? And now it is complete, the validation, and we have filed this for review. And now the regulator can see that we tightened this to a 0.15. So now they will let them know that we are assessing what you sent to us. And again, I'm not a regulator, so maybe this is a bit unrealistic, but now they have 3 different decisions to make, right? I think this would be a slam dunk, but let's just show some of the other options that they can do. And again, the point is to show how APIX can facilitate this exchange, both in terms of regulatory decisions and much more in a matter of milliseconds, right? Okay, so let's say that the regulator would like to see more information about this change here. So they can hit this one. So they are sending that request. They would like to see the stability 36-month stability data that supports this Titan impurity 1 limit. So now there is an action needed here. So the sponsor, they send over the stability report as a PDF this time over to the health authority, and now they have that one. And then they see the response here, and maybe for whatever reason the health authority is still not satisfied, so they can choose to reject it and send that back. They get a complete response over here. This change is not approved, blah, blah, blah. And as you can see, all of this, again, this is a fictional example, but it didn't take that long, right? And I could imagine with the existing paradigm, it takes quite a bit longer than this. All right. But we can also just say that the health authority says this looks fine. You submitted the supporting stability data. We'll approve it. And they get a message back. This specification change will now take effect. We approve it. And all of this was stored as structured data, both in terms of the content itself, but also the audit and provenance for each decision step. So that is essentially a sort of demonstrator for what the APIX standard is capable of. I must say, while designing this solution, that I was extremely impressed. I mean, Craig, he did it again, designed a disruptor. This is very powerful stuff. I hope the regulators will take it seriously, and perhaps it can provide some sort of reference for how this could look in the future. So with that, I'll stop sharing.
Great, thanks, Core. And Omar, over to you.
I'll get my sharing going here. Sorry, just juggling Zoom here. Just give me a sec. All right. I'm Omar Sarang. I'm the Executive Vice President of Government and Regulatory Solutions at DNA Nexus. I'm the architect of Precision FDA, and I designed the user interface for the PRISM project, which connects sponsors and agencies to interact around global regulatory standards. I want to talk about trusted regulatory spaces. This is a term that we coined with our partners, Lorenz, some years ago, and it really was looking at how we can connect different islands in the regulatory stakeholder landscape and do it in a way that is acceptable to security, IT, compliance, because in our world, the exchange of information, much like in the financial world that Craig was alluding to, is non-trivial. The information is sensitive. So we want to talk about our concept for a global network for regulatory data interchange built on top of the APIX standard. This is for sponsors and agencies, one workflow, really key, no shared database, and we have a very strong commitment to information living where it belongs. This is actually running in production on the TRS Commons, uh, sponsored by Lorenz and powered by DNXis, running out of the AWS Frankfurt region. So what you're about to see is how we use APIX to demonstrate the reality of a global network for regulatory data interchange. We have a product called the Tracker, and it has all of the APIX stuff under the hood, and the Fire subscriptions and tasks and everything that we've been talking about is all under the hood. But we've tried to keep it under the hood and to keep this really as user-friendly experience as possible. You'll see a live tracker coordinating one post-approval change across two sovereign agencies. The sponsor sees a single pane of glass, and each agency only sees its own data, and the joint information request is developed collaboratively between the agencies and returned as one response. The disclaimers here are the sponsor and agency organizations that are shown are illustrative only and do not imply any endorsement. All of the data you'll see is synthetic. This demo, as I said, runs on the TRS Commons and is powered by the same technology that powers Precision FDA. So the network is a distributed model, and there's always a tension between ease of use and data sovereignty, security, and compliance. The most secure systems are completely useless because nobody can get to the information, but systems that are highly flexible and interchange with fluid ease can be a problem for regulatory data compliance and security. Data sovereignty, where the data lives, is also very critical for agencies. So we'll see a flow where the sponsor files one joint filing to the FDA and EMA. Those two agencies, again, illustrative only, will each accept their role as a lead, as a participant, and the joint information request will travel from the sponsor, one IR, to both agencies. The sponsor coordinates with many agencies through one point of interaction. The agencies practice reliance, reviewing things together, but none of the data gets merged. All the data lives where it's supposed to live. Sponsor data lives in sponsor FDA data lives in the FDA space, isolated only to that sponsor. Sponsor EMA data lives in the EMA space, the same way it's isolated. And the sponsors tracker is a single pane of glass over the EMA and the FDA space, but there's no data crossover. Data is not bleeding together between sponsors, and data does not bleed together between agencies. One filing, one response out. So you'll see this in action. The joint filing will go out to the EMA and the FDA, who will accept their roles as lead and participant. The joint information request will be developed collaboratively through standard Word-based document red line editing, but all within the tracker platform. And then one IR that's agreed to will get sent back to the sponsor. The data stays in each agency's space throughout. That's really critical. The sponsor only sees one filing and one request and never gets privy to the agency's deliberation. So the sponsor does not have access to the joint information request area. Similarly, the EMA does not have access to the relationship between the sponsor and the FDA, and the FDA does not have access to the relationship between the sponsor and the EMA, but they are participating on this joint information request. Why this architecture? I talked with our colleagues at the APIX group some months ago, and I realized in 10 years of working with the FDA and integrating with other agencies that there are many, many requirements for regulatory data from an agency perspective, the big one being data sovereignty. Information lives in country. The Swiss Medic, they have their stuff on Azure in Switzerland. In France, they're looking at doing sovereign clouds. Same with Canada. But it is really critical that this patient information lives in country. And it's on the agency's or the sponsor's own cloud account. It's not going to be centrally aggregated to a commercial provider's platform. That just there are just so many reasons why that will be a challenge that will never be surmounted in our arena. Data separation is foundational. You can't just have the data separation be the responsibility of your client code. So if you have a single pane of glass at your sponsor that can see multiple agencies, you want to make sure that everything is isolated at the platform level so you don't have a risk of your data going the wrong place. From an agency perspective, you will never want to commingle information from multiple sponsors on a system that has an internet-facing endpoint, as for instance. So we have one foundation with APIX under the hood, but it supports many use cases, some of which we've seen here, and some of which we're working on actively with participants on this call, actually. PAX CMC was discussed today, M11 USDM, M4QR2 for quality and labeling, and many more. So the tracker is built to be it'll take on different personalities as it's needed because it's a platform as a service. So if you need an M11 visualizer and validator, sure, it'll all be incorporated into a common user experience. It's built for regulated data, ISO 27001 certified, GDPR data processing agreement in place, and GXP and 21 CFR Part 11 controls at the platform level. So when you're working on the tracker, you inherit all of this underlying compliance and security. Now we're going to go into a live demo, and it's important to state that the actions I'm doing here through the web interface are all available through an open API. And that's important. We've heard many times over that it's great to see things, and I totally believe in web interfaces because humans need to visualize things, but machines would like to speak through an API. So this is all enabled through an API as well. Now let me see. I think I have to stop sharing and pull up my other screen. No, that's not it. Desktop one. Okay, hopefully we can see the tracker. Just a
Yes, we
quick,
see your from the sponsor. Yeah.
great. So I actually have a few tabs here because, like my colleagues, this is representing the interaction between a sponsor and multiple agencies. But these trackers, these each live where they're supposed to live. So the sponsor's tracker lives wherever the sponsor wants it to on their cloud and their cloud account. The agency's tracker, FDA, lives on the agency side. The data lives on their side. Same with EMA. And then there's a sort of separate landscape, and I call this the agency to sponsor landscape, these three, the sponsor, one agency, another. But there's also the agency to agency landscape. And this reflected here by the agency to agency FDA and agency to agency EMA. These two things are hard boundaries. You do not have the sponsor looking in to the agency to agency, and you do not have agencies looking into other agencies' interactions with sponsors. So that data separation is critical. But let's start right in and just do this application. So I'm going to do a new application for a Sakura Bloom product. I've been working with Sakura Bloom a lot because it's a great CMC use case. I'll select the therapeutic area. And again, remember this can all be done through a API. This is our product notes for FDA. Select the agency. It's going to be a PAX CMC. And I'll do our application description. Let's make this urgent. I'll set a deadline. And under the hood of this is all APIX tasks. So that's what I'm doing here is actually setting up an APIX task, but you wouldn't know it just looking at it. And that was the objective. And I'm going to request that the FDA be a lead. I'm going to create a piece of metadata that connects the multiple submissions, because remember, at the ultimately everything is going to go through the gateway at the EMA or at the FDA. So there's not this concept of a single dossier, but the parts of the dossier that can be shared are shared with the agencies and they can be read. The module one will still be there. And so from the FDA side, I'm going to attach an ECTD zip file for this post-approval change. And then I will review my application and create the submission. And what's happening behind the scenes is the whole Fire bundle, the tasks, everything's being created and it's being connected and relayed to the FDA's tracker side. And you can see here, we have waiting for lead acceptance and we have a new submission that's been created. Now, let me go and do the similar thing facing the EMA. And this will be a type 2 major variation change. Also urgent, and let's get that due date set on the 27th of June. And this time I'm going to request that the EMA is the participant and ship the EMA's version of the ECTD over to them. I'm going to select that joint filing link and create the submission facing the EMA. And now we have the two submissions that are linked by the joint filing. You see, I can't really export them yet, and you can see that I've got pending acceptance for the lead and the participant. So let's switch over to the FDA's agency to sponsor, and you can see they've got a notification, new initial submission, task from Bayer, and I'll accept the lead. Similarly, the EMA has a notification, new initial submission task as a participant, and I'll accept the participation. Then back over on the Bayer side, you can see that the pendings have gone and the export button is now active. And this is going to export a joint filing anchor task for the agency to agency interaction as they construct an information request. So I'll go ahead and export that. And let's just take a quick look at the nature of the user interface here. It's all about products, applications, and tasks. That's the hierarchy in here. The pivots, you can look at things by product, by agency, and here we can see that the sponsor has a fan out, we call it, to multiple agencies. We can look at the tasks by status as well. And now our anchor task is exported to our lead, the FDA. You can also look at tasks on a timeline. So let's take a look at everything we're doing with the FDA, for instance. And this ties into that timeline that Craig was showing. And so I can see all the things that I have going on, interactions with the FDA. And then I can also dive down into task detail, and you can see the full details of a subtask. And as Craig was referring to as well, there are hierarchies of tasks, and you can see that this task is based on a parent task. And in the timeline, you can see that as well reflected here, the hierarchies of tasks. The notifications we've already explored to some degree, but let's take a look at connection management. I really want to say this is not a POC. This is running live. And these connections right now are part of the demo setup that I have, but they all work. They all use fire tunnels. They use the Precision FDA type spaces that are in trusted regulatory spaces. And in fact, all of this is compatible with Precision FDA as well. That's the connection tracker. So let's see now how we build that IR request. So I'm going to come over here to the agency to agency world, and you can see the interagency FDA here, interagency EMA here. Let's hop on down into that collaborative IR development. And the agencies in this space, they have a place to play between themselves where nobody else can see in except the agencies that are assigned to this joint filing. And I can open up my joint filing and find that I have a Word document. I'm going to open the Word document. And then I can make changes in it, save it. We're having a demo moment here. I should have been able to uh, change this and have a history build up on it, but it's not doing that. So suffice it to say that the agencies can use an embedded Word editor with change control and to build up a history of documentation in a single document, all version controlled. And then that document will get pushed back to the sponsor once the agencies have agreed to it. So the agencies both are able to see into that collaboration space and to see the documents in it. And so this is how the agencies collaboratively work together to publish a IR, joint IR back to the sponsor. And then hopping back to the sponsor, we can see in a joint IR, a consolidated information request coming back to them. And here they are able to pick up the document with the edits that came over from the agencies building it. So just to recap, the sponsor created a joint filing, sent it to two agencies who coordinated on it with an embedded editor using Microsoft Word, track changes, all of the same things that people do via email, but all within a constrained space. All of the information for the FDA lives in the FDA's cloud. All the information for the EMA lives in their account. All the information for Bayer lives in a Bayer account. This is a fully distributed network of Fire servers, actually. And all of this, again, is available through the API call as well. So let me just pull up my last slide. And that really just reinforces that the tracker bridges RIM systems to global agencies. The RIM system stays a system of record. Everything's accessible through an open API. And the tracker connects to this network of agencies with each party's data staying in its own account. It's a bridge, not another place to keep regulatory data. It's a place to connect regulatory stakeholders. And that is it for me.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. Omar, Rita, Mohit, Kaur, thank you so much for your presentations. And hang on, let me share one slide here because there's a lot of people. So just want to share this. So I just want to give a shout out to all the people we've been talking to, who've been supporting this project over the past couple months. Just a big thank you for helping us to get this far. And of course, hoping that you'll help us going forward into the future, because I think, as you saw with these systems, there's a lot of promise here. And maybe, I don't know, Omar, Rita, Core, you can comment on the fact that, there's that common refrain in regulatory of, I'll be retired by the time I see this happen. Well, I think it's been a couple months, Omar, Core, that you guys have developed this. And, with Claude and as these AI systems get more and more powerful, I think we are going to see a solution for this appear, not just solutions, robust solutions appear for this in this space much, much faster than anyone could ever have thought possible before. So yeah, and we've got a couple minutes. I don't know if anyone has any questions that they want to shout out before we close. Looking at chat if there's anything. Oh yeah, so Alexander's got one question. Will platforms like this in the long run potentially replace platforms like Viva Vault RIM because all interaction would be on this platform anyways, or is it more of an additional complementary platform?
It's a
I don't know,
bridge.
maybe, yeah.
It's a bridge. It will never replace Viva as a system of record on the sponsor side, but Viva doesn't have footprint in the agency side. So this is fully intended to be a bridge between the Vivas and RIMs of the world and the agency side.
And I also really want to stress that
Thanks.
slide that I had at the beginning. This is not just for, human prescription drugs. Like the intent, that's obviously the focus because like Rita and myself, we come from, the pharma world, but the intent is absolutely to apply this across the other product domains. So devices, vet drugs, health technology assessments. So there's other applications beyond, just this vertical. And this is why, we've tried to give these examples of how it could work on the regulator side. Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Yes, Paul Kerwin, Amgen. So, Omar, thanks for the presentation. It's really, really cool. I'm just going to ask a simple question that you probably is an easy answer. I assume that's scalable across as many health authorities as you'd like to make it. To have these connectors, right? Okay. And
Yep.
so there, and just also to make a clear point, it's not behind this tracker or this connector is not behind the FDA firewall. It's on the front
No.
side, but it's compatible with FDA Prism. Is that correct?
Yeah, in fact, what this does is it actually runs on a workstation inside the trusted regulatory space or inside the FDA. So it is fully scalable. And again, since it runs in this workstation model, all the data lives where it's supposed to live. The FDA data lives at the FDA's cloud account. The EMA data would live in the EMA's cloud account, and it's built to be a distributed network where data lives where it's owned.
Yeah. Thank you. Very good.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, see, but yeah, and Rita, that's a good point. So about so we'll share the slides. So as I mentioned, the recording will be posted on the Vulcan YouTube page and the website. We'll share the slides. We'll share contact information. We'll share information about the projects as well. So the PQI project page, the APIX project page, and so on. So we'll have all that information. So if you want to contribute, you have questions, you'll be able to reach out. Panjatis?
Yeah. Okay, I'm muted. Yes, just to add to the answer before, yes, the system includes also jurisdictional configuration. For example, in Europe, we are on top of that, we're interested about the GDPR. So all this configuration include jurisdictional, let's say, criteria to be part of the process. So it's already there. Thank you.
Already there. That's one of the reasons we put the TRS Commons in Frankfurt. But we're going to probably have one in Switzerland. We're probably going to have one in London because these nodes can live in country.
And also the other thing, which is very important for us from the regulatory point of view, is that, all of this process that is traditional, let's say, it's always there, user requirements, legislation requirements, process requirements.
Yep.
I think looking at the standard and the way that the community converges, it's the right time also for us to take a step forward to see how all these cherries or treasures can use in the everyday environment. And the power of this demonstration is that we can say that the community is ready that is the good message for us. Thank you. Congratulations.
Yeah, definitely emphasize that community aspect. So next steps, we want to share all this information with you, and we need your feedback. So we don't, although we have this nice kind of committee on the project that's developing this, we need broad feedback to test this and make sure we've thought of all the angles. So when we send out the information, please contribute, review the implementation guide, provide us feedback. We're happy to kind of accept feedback from, the community. And the next thing too is testing. So, reaching out to, Rita, Omar, Core, if we can get, partners, pairings with, regulators and, industry and developers that get together and say, we are going to test this, whether it's technical testing and then eventually progressing to production testing. So the more we can test this, the more robust we make it. And this is all about, we don't want to, no one is spending their time on this just to be a nice tech project. This is real. Like, we want to get this to production, and so that we can all start reaping the benefits, especially to patients, if we can accelerate the processes with this. So yes, that's just a call to the community to help us make this real as quickly as possible. So thank you all, and looking forward to working with you as this progresses.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.